I never expected my life to unravel in a courtroom. Not like this. Not with my father as the one swinging the wrecking ball. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting at the defendant's table with my pulse climbing my throat and my own family treating me like a malfunctioning machine, I would have laughed. Back then, I still believed sanity could be measured by love. Now I know sanity has nothing to do with love at all, only power. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and stale paper, warm under the fluorescent lights. The clerk announced the case number with the same boredom I'd heard 100 times that week. Conservatorship hearings don't attract crowds unless rich people are involved. We weren't rich, just broken in complicated ways. My father sat across the aisle, upright in his pressed suit like he was auditioning for a political campaign. His lawyer, a thin, silver-haired man with skin so tight it looked stretched, spoke fast and without hesitation. Your Honor, my client asserts his daughter is in the midst of a psychiatric decline. He has documented episodes of erratic behavior, delusional thinking, and confrontational outbursts. My mother sat beside him. She didn't look at me, not once. Her hands were folded in her lap, like she was praying silently for the judge to choose anyone's version of reality except mine. My brother wasn't there. Apparently, he had a work conflict, which is code in my family for, I don't want to pick a side. My lawyer leaned close to my ear. Let him talk. He'll overplay it. The judge was mid-60s, African-American, round glasses perched low on her nose. Expression unreadable. In that way, only people who've seen too much can achieve. She raised a finger. I'll hear from the father directly. My father stood. Not nervous, not offended, just righteous. He cleared his throat dramatically. He always had a flair for theatrics. My daughter has lost her mind, Your Honor. The air didn't move. No one gasped, no objections, just silence swallowing the words whole, letting them settle like dust around me. He continued. She hid in the backyard at night, believing people were watching her. She stopped sleeping. She accused us of stealing from her. She screamed at her mother for no reason. She smashed plates and talked to strangers as if they were old friends. She thinks we're plotting against her, and her moods swing faster than we can track. I stared at him. Not because I was shocked. He'd rehearsed this version of events for months. I'd seen him practicing in whispers whenever he thought I wasn't listening. But because hearing it said aloud made me realize just how carefully he'd curated the narrative. There were pieces of truth in everything he said, but not in the way he said it, and not for the reasons he implied. The judge leaned forward slightly. Miss Parker, would you like to respond? My throat tightened. My lawyer nudged me. Tell the truth, not the emotional truth, the factual truth. I stood. My knees shook, but my voice didn't. I wasn't hiding in the backyard. I was sitting on the lawn because the house feels suffocating, and it's the only place I can breathe without someone asking what's wrong. I didn't accuse anyone of stealing. I asked where my documents went because someone moved them. And I didn't talk to strangers like they were old friends. I talked to our neighbor, Mr. Ellis, who we've known for 10 years. The judge's eyebrow twitched, just a fraction. I couldn't tell what that meant. Interest, skepticism, or just courtroom muscle memory. And the plates, she asked. I hesitated. That was the one moment I wished I could erase. I broke 2 plates, not 6, not 10, 2. And not because I was angry for no reason, because my father told me I was imagining things again. And when people deny your reality long enough, you start trying to prove it exists. My father scoffed. She believes we're conspiring against her. Are you not? I shot back. The judge held up a hand. Enough. I will ask the questions. My mother finally looked up. Her eyes glistened. Tears, or regret, or performance. Hard to tell. With her, truth always had a disguise. The judge flipped through the packet of medical documents like she was reading a dull novel. Then she paused. Miss Parker, your file notes a trauma incident last year. Would you clarify for the court what exactly occurred? My heart stumbled. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted to. I didn't know how. My father cut in before I could form a word. She exaggerates it. It wasn't trauma. It was a minor accident. She's using it now to justify her behavior. The judge didn't look at him. She just looked at me, finally, and there was no impatience in her voice when she asked again, "What happened?" I swallowed. "There was no accident," I said quietly. "It wasn't minor." My father's jaw tightened. His lawyer stood. "Your Honor." "Sit down," the judge said. "Calm, firm." My palms were damp. The room felt too small, too bright. I could hear my pulse louder than the ceiling fan overhead. "I was assaulted," I said quietly, "last October." The word hung in the air like smoke. My father's face shifted, not in sympathy, not in confusion, but in irritation, like I'd just bent the story out of his control. The judge leaned forward just an inch, but it felt like 10. "And who assaulted you?" she asked. I opened my mouth. I knew the answer. Everyone in that room knew the answer, but saying it would split everything wide open. My father jumped first. "Your Honor, she's making things up again. We have no record of any of this." The judge cut him off without raising her voice. "Mr. Parker, I asked your daughter a question." The room went still again. I drew a steady breath and forced the words out before fear could filter them. "It was my brother." The clerk stopped typing. My mother's hand froze on her purse. My father went pale and then red all at once. For 3 seconds, no one moved. Then the judge leaned forward just enough to change the temperature of the room and said, my mother's reaction came first, a sharp inhale that sounded like pain but might have been shame. Her eyes darted to my father, begging for a signal, a script, anything to tell her how to react. She never did well without instructions. My father didn't blink. He stared straight ahead, jaw locked, nostrils flared. His lawyer lifted a legal pad as if it could shield him from the blast radius of the truth I'd just tossed into the center of the room. The judge waited, not impatiently, deliberately. Judges know when silence does more than sound. "He came into my room," I said. My voice didn't crack. I refused to let it. "He'd been drinking. I woke up because the door hit the dresser. I told him to get out. He didn't." The judge's face didn't change, but she stopped writing. "I pushed him," I continued. "He grabbed my wrist. I tried to scream, but my dad woke up before anything else happened. Not because he heard me, because my brother dropped a glass in the kitchen." My father's lawyer sprang up. "Your Honor, this is theater. If any part of that were true—" The judge raised a single finger. "Sit." He sat. "Miss Parker," she said, "was this reported?" "No." "Why not?" I looked at my parents. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother finally did, just long enough to make me wish she hadn't. "Because my father didn't want the family name dragged through court," I said. "He told me to handle it privately." Handling it privately meant pretending it didn't happen. My father finally broke. "Your Honor, this never happened. My son never." "Where is he today?" the judge asked. My father blinked. "He had work." "What does he do?" "Sales." "Salesmen don't work during conservatorship hearings for immediate family. They show up, they testify, they defend themselves, unless someone doesn't want them questioned." For the first time since the hearing began, my father looked rattled. His lawyer leaned in, whispering fast, lips moving like gears grinding. My lawyer tapped my arm softly. "Breathe. Don't rush. Let their silence work for once." The judge folded her hands. "Mr. Parker," she said, "your father claims your paranoia escalated after this alleged incident. Do you disagree?" "No," I said, "it did." My father turned triumphantly toward the judge, but I didn't stop there. "It escalated because I was terrified. I slept with a chair wedged under my door for 6 months, every night. I jumped at sounds. I stopped trusting my parents. I stopped trusting myself. My father called it delusional instead of what it was, trauma." My father slammed his palm on the table. "Enough." The bailiff moved an inch, just enough to remind him this wasn't his house and he couldn't shout anyone down here. The judge didn't flinch. "Mr. Parker, if you raise your voice again, I'll have you removed. Understood?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Good." Then she turned back to me. "Miss Parker, did you ever seek treatment,
Therapy? Counseling? I nodded. Once. Why only once? I looked down at my hands. There were tiny crescents in my palms where my fingernails had pressed into the skin. My father told the therapist I had attention-seeking tendencies and that I embellish for effect. She seemed more interested in evaluating his vocabulary than my trauma. I didn't go back. My lawyer whispered, "There it is. That's motive." I didn't need him to explain it. Control. Control is always motive. The judge leaned back in her chair. The wood creaked softly. "Mr. Parker," she said, "you are asking this court to remove your daughter's autonomy on the basis of instability. Is that correct?" "Yes."
When the hearing
"And you
resumed
chose
after a
not
short
to address
recess,
a violent
I swear
incident
the
in your
temperature in
home that
courtroom
preceded
dropped
her
10
alleged
degrees.
instability?"
Even the
My
fluorescent
father
lights
opened his
hummed
mouth,
quieter,
but
like
no
they knew
sound
whatever
came
came
out.
next
My
wasn't
mother
going to be
spoke for him.
simple or polite or fit into the neat little script my father thought he'd written. Dad stood near the railing, flipping through papers he didn't need to read, pretending he had control. My mother wouldn't even look at me, and I sat there, palms pressed together in my lap, nails digging into nails, willing myself not to shake. The bailiff called us to order. "All rise!" The judge reappeared, carrying nothing but a legal pad and a blue fountain pen. No files, no discovery packets, no medical reports, just those two objects and the kind of silence that makes people confess before anyone even asks a question. We all sat, and her eyes went straight to me. "Miss Harrington," she said, voice low, almost warm, and absolutely lethal, "you seem to be quite the subject of debate today. Usually, when a family brings competency into question, there's agreement. Here, there is none, and disagreement interests me." Dad cleared his throat, like he'd been given permission to speak. "Your Honor, as I've said, she has become—" The judge held up one finger. Just one. It cut him off faster than any objection could. "No interruptions," she said. "Not today." Then back to me. "Tell me something, Miss Harrington. Do you believe you are mentally unwell?" That question felt like being shoved underwater without warning. I opened my mouth, closed it again, and tried to inhale the right answer. The wrong one could end things in ways I wasn't ready to imagine. I swallowed. "I believe I'm aware of what's happening to me. I believe I know who I am. I believe I know the difference between reality and fear." She leaned forward slightly, pen resting against her chin. "That wasn't what I asked. Are you mentally unwell?" I looked at Dad, then at the attorney I barely trusted, then at the judge. "No," I whispered. "I'm not." The judge pressed her lips together, almost like that answer offended her in some academic, philosophical way. "Interesting." Dad jumped again. "Your Honor, with all due respect, she's been making wild claims, paranoia, fixation, imagining conspiracies that simply aren't—" That finger went up again, and he froze. "You're remarkably eager to narrate her reality for her," the judge said. "Curious." My attorney, who'd been spending most of the morning acting like a bored substitute teacher, suddenly perked up. "Your Honor, I'd like to call the witness we discussed before recess." Dad snapped his head toward him. "What witness?" My attorney didn't say a name. He just turned toward the doors. And before I could ask, before I could breathe, before I could decide if this was salvation or sabotage, the doors opened and in walked someone I hadn't seen in nearly 3 years. Detective Marcus Hale. My heart nearly stopped. Dad's jaw clenched so hard the muscle twitched near his ear. Mom gasped, actually gasped, the way women in movies do when detectives show up with warrants and bad news. The judge's brows lifted. Well, that was not in the initial disclosures. But she didn't sound upset. She sounded delighted. Hale didn't look at Dad. He didn't look at Mom. He didn't even look at the judge first. He looked at me. Not with anger, not with pity, with recognition. The kind that stings. My attorney spoke softly. "Detective Hale investigated Miss Harrington's accident in July, Your Honor. The matter the family has insisted wasn't suspicious." Dad shot out of his chair. "You are not bringing that into this court. It's irrelevant. That's enough, Mr. Harrington. Sit down." He sat, slowly, like every inch of dissent cost him dignity. The judge nodded to the detective. "Proceed." Hale adjusted his tie, dark navy, same shade he wore when we met in the hospital, and cleared his throat. "Your Honor, before Miss Harrington's so-called decline, I was assigned to look into the circumstances of her vehicle crash. While family maintained it was weather-related, our findings didn't match." Dad muttered, "What findings?" "Mr. Harrington," the judge snapped, "another sound from you and I'll have you removed from your own petition." Silence. Heavy, charged, fragile. Hale continued, "We found brake tampering. Clean, professional, not amateur. The kind used to trigger failure on decline without immediately locking the wheels. It was meant to look accidental." The courtroom air shifted. People who didn't care 15 minutes ago suddenly sat straighter. I felt my throat tighten, the memory of metal tearing and blood pooling, and strangers pulling me from twisted steel playing behind my eyelids like a home movie nobody should have filmed. "But the family declined further investigation," Hale said. "They insisted she was confused. They claimed trauma made her imagine things. The file went cold." The judge tapped her pen. "Why come forward now?" Hale's gaze landed on Dad for the first time. "Because someone recently reached out to reopen the case." Then back to me. "She wasn't imagining anything. She wasn't paranoid. She was nearly killed." Mom covered her mouth. Dad gripped the table, knuckles white, eyes burning with something I'd never seen. Not fear, not shame, calculations. The judge leaned in, slow and predatory, voice low enough for every spectator to crane forward. "Mr. Harrington," she asked, voice low, enough to be lethal, "why were you so determined to convince this court that your daughter lost her mind?" I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Dad didn't answer the judge. Not immediately. Not the way guilty men do in shows, where the confession just spills out because the script requires it. Real guilt is stubborn. Real guilt calculates exits. Real guilt looks for fire alarms and procedural loopholes and family secrets that can be weaponized on the spot. He kept his eyes on the judge, like he could out-intimidate her with pedigree and reputation alone. Men like him always believed judges were just well-educated clerks. They never believed a woman could carry power without apologizing for it. Dad finally said, "My daughter has always been imaginative." The judge didn't blink. "Brake tampering is not an imagination." "There's no proof," he shot back, "just a theory from the detective who couldn't close his case." Hale's jaw ticked, but he didn't take the bait. That made it worse. Silence is dangerous when people know they've already said too much. My attorney leaned in. "Your Honor, may I ask Miss Harrington a question?" The judge nodded. "Proceed." "Do you know who would benefit from you being declared incompetent?" That question landed in my lap like a brick dropped from the roof. Heavy, obvious, cruel, necessary. My voice came out thin. "My father." Dad scoffed. "Oh, please." The judge didn't even raise a finger this time. One look shut him up faster than a jury verdict. My attorney kept going. "And what would he gain?" Everything in me wanted to whisper it, to keep it tucked behind teeth and trauma and obedience. But I spent 28 years keeping quiet for that man. It never made him gentler. It never made me safer. So I said it. The trust, the companies, the voting shares, the land my grandfather left me, all of it transfers if I'm declared incompetent. Mom blinked rapidly, mascara threatening to betray her. Her hand crept toward Dad's forearm and then retreated, like touching him might burn. The judge pressed her pen against the legal pad, drawing a line only she could see. "Mr. Harrington, is that accurate?" Dad inhaled slowly, like patience could rewrite reality. "It's not that simple." "Explain it." His mouth opened, closed, recalculated. My daughter is not fit. Financial control is not a measure of mental well-being, the judge cut in. Plenty of wealthy heirs are reckless. That doesn't make them insane. Dad didn't know whether to argue or sit still, so he chose the third option, anger. She thinks someone tried to kill her, Your Honor. She thinks there's a conspiracy around her car accident. She thinks she's being watched. Those are delusions. Hale looked at me again, not as detective, not as witness, something softer, almost regretful. Not delusions, he said, threats. The judge lifted her brows. Threats? We pulled surveillance from the auto shop 2 weeks before the accident. Someone paid cash for a brake job on a car matching hers. No plates. But there is a distinct limp in his gait. Right leg, old injury, consistent with... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Every head in that courtroom turned toward Dad's right leg. The post-ski accident limp he never fully recovered from. The one he pretended didn't exist. Mom whispered, "Oh my God." But it wasn't theatrical. It was small, fragile, real. Dad's face drained of confidence, but not guilt. Guilt is quieter. His looked like strategy collapsing in real time. The judge adjusted her glasses. Mr. Harrington, do you wish to continue with the petition to have your daughter declared incompetent?